Okay, let's start recording. Huh? Yeah, we can. You can see it on screen. Yeah, but I'm sorry. Okay. Let's see. Oh yeah, you should open this. Okay, excellent. All right. You can turn on. Just to watch that. So you can find it. Mike, house, text underneath it. All right, guys, we're already 10 minutes late. So let's get going. Sorry about the new location here. It's only for one meeting. They're starting early voting at Bayland, so we got kicked out along with every other club in Bayland on this week. So anyway, I'm Joe Powers, president of the club. We have guest visitors, speakers tonight. We also have a representative from Harris County Beekeepers who's going to come tell us about how to sign up for the rodeo. And then we're gonna do. I guess we'll let you do that first. And then we'll have Christy do introduction to beekeeping for about 5 minutes. And then we'll have our speaker talking about how to catch swarms. So if y'all can just bear with us, let's get our first speaker up here.
My name is Gary Parks. I'm a
Gary,
oh, I'm
stand
sorry.
right in this area.
Sorry.
Then they can see you on TV.
I'm still Gary Parks, and I am a member of the Harris County Beekeepers Association. Our association is charged with staffing and running the bee exhibit at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. The exhibit is in an area called Ag Venture, which is on the eastern end of the main NRG Center, the biggest building out there. We have several slots we'd like to fill if we can with volunteers. First and foremost, you know now more than anybody you're going to encounter at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. So if you're concerned at all about volunteering and you don't think you're able to do it, you're wrong. You're very able to do it. Our shifts are broken down. The show runs from February 27th to March 17th. We have 2 shifts per day. The first one, the morning shift, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. and the evening shift, 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. If you are able to join us, you'll get a couple of benefits to make your volunteering easier. And by the way, do we have Ilana Heen here tonight? I'm supposed to deliver these. Oh, there you are. Okay. I'm going to use you as a demo and then I'll bring these to you afterwards. Oh, you already got some, didn't you? All right. That's okay. We'll use these. Sorry.
Hold your poster.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great job. Thank you, sir. All right. If you're able to volunteer, you're going to get 2 things. Number 1 is a grounds pass. This gets you into the rodeo grounds free of charge. I like to tell our volunteers the dirty little secret. This is good for the run of the show. So if you can come out and work a shift, that's great. And if you just want to go out and wander around the rodeo on your own and enjoy it, this will get you in for free. We have a slight change this year on the parking and bus ride. We had some confusion last year. You will also get a ticket. This allows you to park for free at the Reed Road parking lot, and that will get you a round trip bus fare to and from the ground. So it makes it very, very easy, very inexpensive. Last item I'll mention, I'll be over here for a few minutes with the chart that Joe's kind enough to hold for us. And if for some reason you don't have a calendar with you, you're not sure when you might be able to volunteer, this is live on our website. So if you go to harriscountybeekeepers.org, all run together, harriscountybeekeepers.org, click on the calendar button, this will pop up. If you see a shift you want, hit the email button and say, my name is Joe, my cell phone number is Y3, and I can work on the 14th in the morning, okay? Any questions you all have? Yes, sir. Say again? It's a 6-hour shift. And you take breaks and lunch and everything, but it's 9 a.m. to 3 in the afternoon for the morning shift, 3 in the afternoon to 9 o'clock in the evening shift. I'll mention also, if you volunteer during the week, during the day, you are going to see thousands of little kids coming through. We have hundreds of buses bringing these kids through to see all of the exhibits. If you want a more diverse crowd, come on the weekends, and no telling what you might see.
Yeah, or the evenings.
Or the evenings, right? Good point. And again, thank you very much for letting me have the time
All right.
to speak to you. I hope we see you out there. Thank you, and I'll be over at the desk if you need me.
Okay, Gary, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, and now, okay, so as y'all are aware, this is our first actual in-person meeting this year. Thanks to the weather last time canceled our meeting, so we had to do it from Dan's house as a Zoom. Thank you, Dan, for letting us do that. So Dan, are you here? I know you're here. I saw you. Did you bring that swarm trap for our door prize? Okay, so we have 4 door prizes there. We have the swarm trap, and we have 4 drinking cups. Oh, they're down here. Another, yeah, these 4 nice cups for door prizes. So be sure you get signed up so you get one of the door prizes. Okay. 5.
Got a agricultural liability sign.
Okay, then Richard has that. Okay, fantastic.
The league's version, from the Texas Farm Bureau, so that it can go fast.
Fantastic. Okay, so our new meeting format is a little different than it was last year. We're doing B school at the very beginning of the meeting, which is about 10 minutes. And Christy's going to do that this time. This was Mike's program. Mike can't be here, but Christy and others have volunteered to take different subjects. So Christy tonight's going to talk about basically the beehive. All right, let me put up your PowerPoint now.
My name's Christy. I'm y'all's new secretary for this year, 2024, and I'm going to go over the parts of the hive very, very briefly and setting up your apiary and things of that nature. All of these are topics that could do their whole hour presentation, but I'm just going to have to race through them really pretty quickly. In the front here, I don't think people on Zoom are going to be able to see, but in the front here, Joe has been kind enough to bring us an entire hive setup. Starting down from
We'll bring it up front where you can show it.
starting down from the baseboard, which would be this piece right here. This is a solid bottom board. You could also get screen bottom boards, which I use. I don't know if they help, but it's what I've always used. Then our next piece would be our brood box, a deep box here. And Joe has provided us with all the frames that go in. This is actually a wax foundation frame, but he also has plastic foundation frames and then full plastic foundation frames. Drone frames is usually what I would use this for. He's also provided a division feeder that just slides in the way a frame would. Is that what you would call it, Joe?
Yeah. It's 1 gallon, I think, or 2.
The next would be your medium box, also called a honey super. If you're going to just run a single deep brood box, that would go on top. It's full of frames as well, medium frames with plastic foundation. Well, with frames. Then on top of that would go, would you call this a top feeder? A top feeder. I use the division board feeders, but these are popular. And his has the mesh running down the middle, which is important to have so the bees don't drown. He has also provided a a boardman feeder, correct?
Yes.
That would go in the front of the hive there. And an entrance reducer that you could use seasonally if you want to reduce the entrance in the event of seasons where it's robbing is high. Next would be what, the inner cover?
Yeah, I put the inner cover under the feeder.
I don't use the top feeder, so they're gonna fool me on that. Inner cover, solid inner cover. Sometimes I use a screen inner cover too in the summer. Cup feeder. And then the telescoping lid, and I think he has a cutout in case you ever wanted to put in a jar. for feeding.
You can put a bucket feeder on top of it.
Oh, a bucket, okay. So parts of the hive, what's next?
Getting there.
How to set up your apiary. This is a picture of mine, the way I've set mine up. Along the north part of my property is a tree line. So my hives back up to that because I thought it would create a good north wind break. I have mine set up 1 or 2 at a time on pallets on cinder blocks. But there are lots of different kinds of hive stands, freestanding ones or cinder blocks with beams across. I mean, I'm sure there's any number of ways that you can set up a hive stand. And there are YouTube videos galore about it. Oh, also setting up your apiary. There's studies that show that maybe facing south, your entrance, is helpful if you're setting up your apiary or your hive in an urban area. I've been told that you want to set it up facing the fence, the entrance, so that when the bees leave the hive, they go up and out instead of in the line of traffic, people or pets or, along the ground. I'm sure there's more reading that you can do on that with different. Okay, and so here's equipment. PPE, just really quick, is your personal protective equipment. Either a full suit or a veil, gloves, whatever you feel is necessary for your own personal protection. Tools would include a hive tool, which I probably have 7 of them. And they're in every room and every car that we have. You can never have too many. A bee brush is something that I've also used pretty frequently. That's a honey extractor that I finally splurged on. It's electric, so I don't have to hand crank it. I think it's maybe $260 last year. That was well worth that. Let's see. Honey extraction and processing, you'd want an uncapping tank, you'd want a knife, either a heated knife or a serrated knife, you would want buckets, you'd want not filters, but strainers, bags usually. I feel like these are whole topics that people go through.
They are.
I'm trying to race through, but I would encourage anyone who's interested in getting more in depth in this to go to the Bee School hosted by the Central Texas Beekeepers Association. It's the first Saturday of March in Brenham at Brenham High School. And there are a bunch of classes on the intro to beekeeping, on equipment, on honey extracting, on setting up your apiary, on tools, on what people wish that they had known when they started. And I would highly recommend it. It's a full day and they do a great job with that. We good?
We're good.
I thought.
Okay. Thank you, Christy. All right, just to remind you guys, we're going to do something a little bit like that every week, every month, that is. Okay, so now let me introduce our actual speaker for tonight. Phone will go right side up again. There it goes. Mark Lockhart, who is Katie Busy Bee, owner of Katie Busy Bee, and he's a founding member of the Texas Association of Professional Bee Removers. And he's going to talk to us tonight about removing bees from structures.
Right,
All right,
okay.
let's see.
For those.
Mark,
do I need
let me give you this.
Okay, thank you.
It's already turned
And
on. So you just
What
have
we're
to
gonna
just-
do about it,
I'm
the
gonna-
camera's that way and the equipment's over there, so,
Probably just drag the equipment around because
okay,
the camera doesn't move too good.
okay. Yeah, and we'll keep that back.
What about your PowerPoint?
You can get that first picture of it.
Yeah, let me see if I can find it.
It's a big swarm.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, all right, my name is Mark Lockhart. I'm the owner at Katie Busy Bee, which we're an apiary, I'm a honey supplier. I sell to 3 different retail stores. I have 3 apiaries now. And for the last 17 years, I've been doing cutouts. Now I'm not talking about swarm catching, I'm talking about cutouts, going to a structure, into a house, into a shed floor, things like that. It's very kind of specialized knowledge. Who here has ever done a swarm capture or, you know, an open air hive? Okay. Who here has ever done a cutout? You cut through wood, okay. So I might be preaching to the choir, you guys. Who here has ever thought about doing a cutout? Okay. Of course. All right. A little bit of a disclaimer first. I forgot to mention that. This is my opinion. There's 10 cutout people in a room. There'll be 12 different ways of doing a cutout. Everyone's got their own style, their own methods. This is just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. This is not going to authorize you to do a cutout. But what we're trying to do with the Texas Association of Professional Bee Removers is we are trying to create a community where we're self-supporting each other, where we can call each other for help. Ryan's called me for help. I've called him for help. We run to the rescue. We answer questions over the phone. We're trying to develop a set of best practices so that people know, well, this is one way to do it, but this is a way that most people have found that are successful. We're getting together a list, and this is a statewide organization, so our meetings are held monthly by Zoom. And so we're getting together a list so that people can find us, because we suspect the way the politics is going, that the Texas Apiary Inspection, Removal, and Relocation list is about to go bye-bye. They've been trying to do away with that for the last 2 legislative sessions. And so we see that just going away. So take this for what it's worth. This is for entertainment value and to give you a little bit idea of what's going on. Now, I'm not talking about your little swarms. That's 222,000 bees in that swarm right there. Next slide. Okay. Yeah, you can see it a little bit better. It's really big. I'm not talking about your open air colonies. Next slide. That's an open air colony in a palm tree that's covered with bees. You can't see the wax, but it's in there, and it was a well-established colony. And what I'm talking about are things like your floor joists. Okay, I didn't take all of this out. Half of this was already removed by a previous person, and the bee colony is right here. I'm talking about, next slide. There's a floor joist again. There's a vent pipe there. That's like a dryer vent pipe, bathroom vent pipe. Unfortunately, Houston has some of the crappiest construction in America, and they leave a lot of gaps. Typically, they will not hook the vent pipe to the vent cover with the little louvers. They just put it close. That's close enough. What's the worst can happen? Some bees go in there through the louvers around the edge, and now they infest the joist, just like the next one. And you can see this is another colony that's infected the joist. Typically, what I find is that floor joists are about 40% of all the colonies that we get called on. And like I said, I've been doing this for 17 years. I've been doing nothing but bee removals. I've been making my living for the last 12 years. That's all I did is bee removals and harvesting honey. But my bread and butter, and I'm sorry, introduce my assistant, Daniel James. He's my partner, basically, who's been working together 5 years. Daniel is as good as I am on everything except texturing drywall. Other than that, I can do. Okay, texturing drywall, it's like, Mark, come here, do this for me. Okay, the next slide. The other 40% that we find are typically soffits. Now, the soffit is defined as the horizontal overhang of a roof. It creates a triangular cross section. To the bees, that's the same as a hollow log. Typically, these will be a shaded soffit. They'll be under a tree, or they'll be on the north side of the house, or they'll be shaded by some other part of the structure of the house. And very, very typically, you will see a gable that comes down and meets that soffit. You know how they have the entryway with the little peak and then the little corners around the side there? They love it. They love it. That gable creates a chimney effect and they get excellent ventilation. Then the next slide. The next places are weird, like behind bricks on a gable, you wouldn't think there'd be enough room there, but you remove the brick and there they are. So, you know, if you don't want to remove brick, you don't want to do that kind of job. Next slide. Patio box. Next. Piece of farm machinery. The lids, I think it's a cedar and the seeds go in there or something, but lift it up. That is a large column. It's wood. Unlike most all columns, this is like on a $3 million house, that is actually a structural column. There's no inner support. Most of these columns, you go out and see them, they've got 2x4s or 4x4s actually holding it up. This is actually holding the third story up. This is along the roof. So we had to cut out just a little small window and put it back. So in order to not compromise the strength. Next slide. Compost bins. Next slide. Normally, these need at least 4 gallons of volume to build the pond. All right, if you read Dr. Sweeney's book, he'll say that they typically will pick trees in the wild that have between 4 and 45 gallons of volume. Too small, they're not able to make 40 pounds of honey to last through the winter. Too large, and they can't create a microclimate because the beehive or bee colony, and correct me because I got in a very bad habit of calling feral colonies beehives. And that's not correct. It's only a beehive if it's in a man-made box. So if I mess it up, please excuse me. But if it's too large, they have a hard time creating a microclimate. It's a honey dehydrating machine, and they control the temperature in there to keep it around 97 degrees. They control the humidity. They control, they line up their wings and they will control the direction of the air currents. They might flow it in one direction in the morning and in the evening they'll turn around and at the other, flow in the other direction. So when you come across these situations, always look and think to yourself, does this make sense where they're at? It's very analytical. Dan can tell you it's almost like being detective work. Where are they at? Just because they're going into the hole right here doesn't mean that that's exactly where they're at. Normally they are. Normally it'll be within 6 inches of that hole, but we've seen them go 6 feet for various reasons. This was only about 2 gallons of size and had a beehive in it, or bee column. See, I get it. Next slide. Another birdhouse. Next slide. And I moved it into our yard, and there it is. And I get to take the bees out and they overwinter just fine. But I do feed my bees all winter long, so that's probably helpful. Next slide. Normally, you will never see them go into a flexible vent. However, this was one of those whole house air exchange vents. It was 12 or 14 inches wide. And so they were actually in there. Go, next slide. Spools, cable spools, those big wooden cable spools. Next. Power boxes, control boxes. Gotta be real careful with these. This is a solar farm out around Sealy, and it hadn't been hooked up yet. But removing honeybees can be dangerous. I know people that have broken their leg. One woman broke her ankle. Another guy I heard broke his neck. Didn't kill him. There was a beekeeper in St. Petersburg, Florida, got electrocuted, died. So it can be very dangerous. You have to be careful. You have to know what you're doing. I would say that honeybee cutouts are 75% construction knowledge and only 25% knowledge of bee behavior. So if you don't have the requisite construction knowledge, don't have hubris. We're very guilty of that. Oh, I know what I'm doing, or I can figure it out. I started this, like I said, 17 years ago. The first year I didn't charge for it because I knew I didn't know what I was doing. But then I thought I knew what I was doing. It took me 5 years to get good at it. So I'll just let you know about that. Next slide. Strange worker. ground level, going through a gap in the foundation, water pipes, under a bathtub. Next slide. That's when you really get into your work. Had to go in there and curve around because it went around on the other side of the tub too. There was no way we were going to be able to get that tub out of there. Next slide. Behind installation of a water softener. Next slide. And there they are. Next slide. Columns. Now you don't have to go back please, everything out. You have to be able to get up enough to reach your hand and reach everything this way and reach your hand this way. These type of columns, they always have a 4x4 or typically more two 2x4s on the inside. And the bees will oftentimes build around like that. So where you've got 2 holes on this side, you might have 2 staggered holes on the other side. There are ways to cut out brick individually, take them all out like a Lego block and put them back. We have special tools for that. I'll try and get to that when we can. All right, next slide. Not electric, but traffic light poles. This was one Siemens had me come out middle of the night, 1 o'clock in the morning, and we shut down the intersection, went up there and got the bees out of a metal pole. I don't know how they survived in the heat in a metal pole, but they did. Should I be? No. Okay, all right, next slide. Of course, your cable boxes, your irrigation control boxes, very popular, easy to do. I would encourage anybody to go ahead and do these. Now, I never do anything for free. Okay, if they want me to come out there and do that, I am going to at least get them to reimburse me for the cost of the woodware, because for every new colony I get, I'm going to have to buy a new box. Next slide. All right, that's the lid there. It's easy to cut off. Manhole covers, those can be hard to lift. Water company calls me, City of Katy calls me. Next slide. You would think that these buildings and big houses like this, they look like they're stucco. It's actually paint on top of styrofoam. And birds will peck a hole in there and they'll get in there and the whole thing was rotten on the inside. Remember that? Yeah, we opened it up and all the wood that was holding those styrofoam blocks was just gone and bees were in there. Next slide. Chimneys. This is a chimney. Right here is the clay pipe, the inner pipe. This is the exterior wall. What you don't realize, there's an inner chimney and an outer chimney. Next slide. Sometimes that inner chimney is metal. And so, and the outside is stone, but they have the stone veneer attached to something. So it's just plywood OSB. This one actually had 2 colonies in the same chimney. Next slide. And there's the one on the left. There's the blue pipe again on the right side. I don't know why it had 2 colonies. I only found 1 queen. Okay. Next slide. This is going to be your typical situation. You're going to have an entryway here and what people call bird boxes because they get birds in the corner of them here. Now, think, where could the bees be? Well, the soffit is an obvious choice, but look, you have those fake brick columns that stick out. So that gives them more than the normal 2 to 3 inches that's normally behind a brick veneer wall. That gives them space to go down those columns. Also, you have a brick archway going over there, so they could go over the archway. If they typically will start in the soffit, but if they fill it up and run out of room, they'll move behind the brick or up into the gable. Yes, up into that. And so you have to think about where they're at. Take your infrared camera if you have one. If not, you can drill small holes and just probe with a long stiff wire. The long stiff wire is actually better than a $600 infrared camera because the infrared camera doesn't tell you how far the stores of honey go. Because I did a floor joist once, infrared heat signature about 1.5 feet. Honey stores went another 5 feet deep into the floor joist. So it can mislead you a lot of times. Next slide. Check on the inside in there. There could be bees there, either in the archway or in this wall, or even above. Next slide. And actually, after we took that trim out and looked over the brick from inside, right above the doorway, we found more honeycomb. This had everything. It was what I would call the triple threat. It was in the gable, it was in the soffit, it was in the brick column, and it was just a little bit in the ceiling. Normally, a lot of times you could have reached this from the attic, but I couldn't get my hand down deep enough, so I had to come out and make another cut, okay? Observe their activity. Are they acting normal? Are the bees frantic? A lot of times you'll come across a situation, people don't see a beehive because they're not looking, bee colony. Because they're not looking for a bee colony. People typically will tell us that they have noticed the bees for 2 weeks. The average colony we removed has been there for 2 years. Because you don't see something if you're not looking for it. It has to be some kind of different activity. One of the things that causes people to notice is a dead hive and colony, and now you've got robbing. Now robbing, it's real easy to spot. It's frantic behavior. They smell that honey, but they don't know where the entrance is. So they're just going everywhere, and they don't have pollen on their legs, and they're not defensive. So that's how you can recognize that. Next. Yeah, the infrared camera, if you can look there, you see a little hot spot right to the left. Right there, yeah, right there. Next slide. And that told us that it was in the wall of this house rather than the roof, and saved us a lot of trouble. And so we were able, you know, but I could have gotten the same information by pushing the stiff wire through a hole. It comes back with honey on it. Honey, or you can feel it punching through the wax if it's dry comb. Next slide. Sometimes, this is what I call the chandelier. They will build in the attic. Why did they build in the attic? I couldn't figure it out. Then the homeowner told me, well, they were in the soffit, and I kept spraying them and spraying them and spraying them. You know, every couple of days he'd go out from the ground 25 feet up, he'd spray them. Until finally, they abandoned the comb in the soffit and moved up here. So I charged him extra because that's 2 colonies, a live one and a dead one. It's his own fault. Okay. Next one. Yeah, you have to check out the farm. Sometimes you can only get them from the attic. Next slide. And that's with the same colony with the bees into the shop there. Next slide. I don't know if it shows up very well, but on the left, you'll see new honeycomb, and to the right, you'll see the tracks of old honeycomb. We've had colonies that have come back to the same spot. One guy said, there was a beehive there when I was in high school, and he was retired. It didn't come back 40 years later to the same spot. People say it's pheromones. It's not pheromones. It's the old wax that attracts them. We're just saying that old wax brings new bees. All right, next slide. Here's another example. Brick wall on the outside. We've only done it from the attic. Next slide. Another attic only situation. Next slide. It might be hard to tell, but this is one of those spray foam insulated attics. They will get into the soffit there, and this, because the spray foam doesn't get into the soffit, it doesn't go past that those 2x4s that make the wall plate. But they don't really have much room to grow. But that spray foam will not stop them. They'll just chew right through that. And there was a little, before I did that big hole, there was just a little tiny hole where bees were coming through on the other side. And the infrared camera didn't pick it up. Next slide. This one was a great big one in an attic with foam insulation. There's a lot of bees on the back side. Why are there no bees on all that beautiful honeycomb that's full of honey on this side? Because it's so white, because it had been totally dusted. It looked like it had talcum powder. Somebody had put insecticide dust on it the year before. The dust is only effective for a while. The dust loses its effectiveness, bees come back in. Next slide. That's another one looking down. There's flat roofs, there's gable roofs, and then there's cathedral roofs, and then there's semi-cathedral roofs. So a lot of times this insulation, this rafter that is right there on the sides, the sloped sides of the ceiling, one of those semi-cathedral bedroom ceilings. If they forget to put the insulation in there, the bees will build into that from the soffit up to that. You may not be able to reach it all from the outside. Next slide. This is what it looks like when you have to do it from the ceiling. You cut through there.
That's popcorn texture, isn't it?
Huh? Yeah. Yeah, that's a popcorn texture. And it's really hard to do these, but I have the gun, I have the material. It took me a while to find it. Another thing, you don't really need the infrared camera. You can feel the heat with your hands a lot of times. There's going to be a noticeable difference because it's going to be 98 degrees. Now, you're not going to be able to feel behind a brick or anything like that. People say, well, you can hear them. Yeah, not really. It's not good enough. But with your hand, you can feel it. If you do need to go into the attic, I meant to mention this, take your supplies with you. It's very dangerous to work in an attic for two reasons. One, you might fall through. I've had two people that I've been working with that fell through the ceiling. Fortunately, they didn't go all the way to the floor, but now I've got a really big hole I need to fix. The other thing, the biggest danger working in an attic is heat exhaustion. So take boards up there to lay on, tarps to lay on, because getting covered in honey and then covered in fiberglass, I can tell you it's no fun. It's the modern day equivalent of being tarred and feathered. Take a light source and take some cooling material with you. All right, I take 1 or 2 gallons of ice water. Daniel's brother has worked with me before. He actually has an electric circulating ice water vest. I have an ice vest that you can put in the freezer, and it's got these packets of ice in it. I didn't wear it last year. I didn't wear it the year before. It wasn't hot enough. Not in my opinion, but I'm used to it. Okay. Take 2 light sources when you're in the attic. Don't wear boots. Nope. Yeah. When we go into other people's houses, we like to wear those little booties. They're either cloth or plastic. Do not wear that in the attic. They are slippery as can be. Okay. Another thing of assessment, has it been spray foamed? Can you see all of that ugly spray foam there? Was there another one before this that had spray foam?
I don't think so. I'm looking.
No, okay. All right, and the bees were coming in right at the corner, and he had a previous hive and they'd taken care of it. Next slide. And you can't see it very well in the photo, but this corner that I opened it on, it had all these tracks of honeycomb that were gone. He had never opened it. Nobody had ever cut it out, but they were gone because, next slide. What they did was they went over to the next corner, and then because he had sprayed them, and when the poison wore off, they went back in there and reclaimed the beeswax. And if you look at the bottom of the picture here, you can see what looks like a gap. When a colony dies, the honey starts fermenting, absorbs moisture, breaks off, drips. I've had people whose ceilings have collapsed due to the wet honey getting on the drywall, making it wet, and then falling through. After an exterminator said, "Oh, everything will be all right." If it doesn't collapse, the gypsum gets wet, and now the roaches and the mice come and they eat it. And you'll see all the little roach poop. It's not black roach poop, it's white roach poop. And next slide. It's a little bit better, you know, in a dark room, but you can see that there's all this opening right there. And below that, there's nothing but paper left. There is no more drywall left. It's just paper. Next slide. And they were coming through the house. And so we put a pole up there to keep them up from coming into the kitchen. All right, next slide. They call it great stuff. I call it awful stuff. That spray foam doesn't work. They eat right through it. It's ugly. It's not weatherproof. It oxidizes in the sunshine. It's supposed to be protected from the weather and or painted. And it's hard to control. And once it gets on your brick and your siding, it's very, very difficult to get it off. Next slide. Yeah, that's the great stuff I was looking for. That's actually pest block, the black gray foam. They eat through that too. Pest block is supposed to keep animals from eating through it because it has some kind of chemical. Bees don't care. Next slide. Sometimes, and this one goes all the way from here to here, they will build behind a brick. There's only about 3 inches of gap there. So they built one huge wide piece of honeycomb. There's no hard and fast rules. Anything I tell you, there's always going to be an exception to the rule. Like that birdhouse. No, they won't make a colony in something that's only 2 gallons of wine. They did. Next slide. And the customers will lie to you. Oh, I haven't sprayed the bees. There's can spray. Next slide. Yep, there's 2 or 3 cans of spray down the cracks. Yep. They call them bug bombs. They'll and toss them in the attic. Next slide. There's another spray bottle. Next slide. This guy got ingenious. He was going to shoot it down a PVC pipe. It didn't work. Just made him scoot over one joist over to the next soffit space. Sometimes we get calls to come out and clean up other people's messes. This is a bee colony that a bee remover came out. He decided that it would be easier, cleaner to cut through the roof, left a really big, ugly hole. And it doesn't show, but that is all wet. It's like an ocean of honey in there. Next slide. And this is what it looked like on the inside. You see all the dead bees on the bottom here. You've still got lots of wax and honey up at the top. It was a mess. So we did a repair for that. But I charge more for someone else's repair than I do for my removals. My removals, I start at $700, and I do contract work for Terminex, Katie, Pest Control, Modern Pest Control. I charge them more, a lot more, and people pay it. Terminex doubles the price, and they pay Terminex. So, you know, there's money to be made if you know what you're doing, if you're safe, if you can do it. And am I teaching my competition how to do this? Taking money out of my mouth? In a way I am. But when I first started this, I went to a beekeeper and she had been doing this for 10 years. And I asked her, I said, I'm getting the bees out, but I'm not having good luck with the transfer and saving them. And she, can you give me some advice? And you know, supposedly she loves the bees. She said, why would I want to help my competition? And I just left a bitter taste in my mouth. So I don't think I have competition. I get 20 phone calls a day. I can't handle it all.
Hey, Mark,
Yes.
how many full-time beekeepers or how many full-time bee removers are there?
In Houston, I would estimate probably 40 full-time bee removers. Not people like yourself that are just like doing it on the weekends and you know you have a regular job, but I would estimate there's 40. Now the Texas Apiary Inspection Service maintains a list, but not everyone is on that. And it's listed by county. And if you go through the list, I did a spreadsheet on it once when this politics thing was happening. And there's about 400 listings, but you see the numbers that are duplicated, And I sifted it, it came out to 124 people across the state. But that's just on one list. And there's a dozen of them I can think of that do it here in Houston that are not on the list. Okay. Yep. Dead colony. Thank you, Mr. Exterminator. Now the honey's dripping through the ceiling and down the walls. Next. Sometimes you got to get creative with your ladder work if you're going to reach these things. And I've got plywood to protect the roof. I've got the ladder leaning against the chimney. Next slide. I've got my harness on. That's a big safety point. Works safely. You see, sometimes they go down the chimney and you got to get them. Next slide. This is what I call my pickle Rick solution. There's no way to stand on that roof. It's too steep. So I've got a long ladder that goes left to right, and I can lay on that ladder. I've got foam pads to protect the shingles. I need to be able to get up to that ladder because if I tried to walk up it like a bridge, I would fall. So I've got the silver ladder there, and I needed the ladder to not crush the gutter. So I have a 2x4 there to keep the ladder off of the gutter. You got to get creative sometimes. Next slide. Very creative. The bees were in that soffit just to the right. Yes, right there. And this was a brand new white standing seams roof. So we had to do it to figure out a way of not marring her roof. Okay. Once again, a ladder laying at an angle, so I've got something to stand on or lay down on. Foam pads, old upholstery pads, old yoga mats work really good. Anything like that. Next slide. Sometimes you have to work right where an air conditioning unit is. You have to figure out a way of getting it. Next slide. Once again, a lot of times they'll go into these soffits of a dormer. You know what a dormer is? It's a window that pokes through a ceiling, second story, third story. So that soffit to that dormer had bees in it, and I had to find a way to lay up there. What you don't see in the picture is we've got a rope that goes all the way over the house to the next, to a tree. And I've got sliding cinders, and I used to be a rock climber, harness and things like that so we can work safely. Next slide. This is typically what you'll see on a floor joist. Now, a lot of these floor joists, it's going to be brick on the first story and siding on the second story. That does two things. One, it leaves hundreds of cracks for the bees to go in. Two, the walls might have insulation unless it's an old house or if it's a garage wall. But the walls have insulation. Bees typically will only build a colony in an empty cavity. So the stud walls are not empty, but that floor joist is. And so you've got to think about this. You've got your stud wall that comes down vertical. I don't know. Okay, I'll just tell you about this. The stud wall comes down like this, and then you've got your brick wall, and then the second story floor extends out till it's even with the brick. What that does is that creates a space that the bees can now get under that brick, go up into the second floor. There may be a little bit of insulation there, but usually they only use 3 inches. And so the rest of that floor joist is open for invasion. I've seen them go back 8 feet into that floor joist sometimes. How do you get the honeycomb out if you going back 8 feet? Well, you get a very long 5 tool and high tool cut it, and then plastic sled or something like that to catch it, or even just a towel. Push a towel under there, and the sled will catch the parts you cut off and pull it back. Are we creating a huge mess? There's going to be a huge mess one way or the other. Next slide. This is typical for a gable cutout. This is that 45-degree angle that's above the bird box. Normally, they won't cross over these 2x4s that go crossways, but in this case, they had space, and so they went two spaces rather than just the one. Next slide. Another way of doing a floor joist, you can go through the subfloor, especially if there's carpet upstairs. You can just easily cut that out. If you notice, you can cut right where the floor joist is. You don't even need any splice wood except for the one piece at the bottom down here. I would use a 2x4 and liquid nails to splice that back and clean it up, put the carpet back. It's like it never happened. Next slide. This is a big one on the corner. I did not want to hurt the crown molding. We want to be real careful on this one because, next slide. We did not want to damage the painting that had been specially commissioned for this house, or the $20,000 table that had been imported from Spain using antique wood. So, and you can see the ceiling there, it has a little octagon in the top left corner. That extra space gave the bees lots of room. There was no way to do it from the outside. Next slide. Plastic is your friend, especially if you're doing it inside. We've not only put plastic down, but then you put tarp over the plastic. Plastic catches the drips. The tarp is to protect the plastic against abrasion and punctures. That's one we had to do in the ceiling there. That's after we patched it. I've only got the plastic down because I had come back a second trip for the repair. So I wasn't doing the cutout, but when we did the cutout, we had 2 layers of plastic and a tarp. Next slide. These perforated soffits, they say they're small enough for bees to not get in, but they can. Some that are smaller, but they have a problem. Next slide. It scrapes off their pollen, and they have a naturally created pollen trap. So next slide. And it'll be in the gutter. Next slide. It'll be on the leaves down below, so they can get into those perforated soffits. Next slide. Sometimes the only way to get to them is through a roof. When I do a roof, that's a whole complicated story, but I take it apart like a jigsaw puzzle. You lay it down on the ground. All the holes are marked. You got match marks to know where everything lines up. And then when you put it back, it goes right back in the same spot. Sometimes you need specialized tools for that. Oh, right, yeah. Like this is a roof, it's called a roof snake. It's for pounding the nails in under the shingle, so you don't bust the shingle. But you don't have to do roofs like that. I'll get to these tools in a minute. Okay, next slide. Your smoker, you want to be judicious, not use a whole lot of smoke. 2 reasons. One, these bird's nest boxes, there might be a bird's nest in there. You're going to be blowing smoke and flames in there. And the second reason is you don't want to chase the bees away from you. You want them to, calm down a little bit, but you don't want to give them so much smoke that they run over to an adjacent rafter or to an adjacent floor joist where you can't reach them now. There's ways of getting around that, but it's better if you don't have to do that. Also, Africanized bees, smoke doesn't affect them at all. They don't calm down a bit. Okay. Next slide. Here's an archway. It's only 1.5 bricks wide. Bottom brick's fallen out. The white keystone has slipped down 3 inches. I was not going to do that from the outside by taking out any bricks. That thing's ready to fall down now. Had to go up in the attic and go through a very, very narrow gap to get out. Next slide. There's a bigger picture of it, a better picture, a distance picture. Next slide. Remember, I said it has to make sense. This didn't make any sense. The entrance was way up there at the left, but my heat signature was way down here at the bottom. Until I talked to the guy and he said, yeah, I've been spraying them and caulking and spraying and foaming until finally they said, all right, we'll just make another entrance somewhere else. Their colony was still there at the original location. Next slide. They love to pick complicated areas. The more cables, the more wires, the more pipes, the more they like it. Next slide. Yep. Sooner or later, you're going to find a wire or a cable. And people don't follow the code around here. Code is that the wires are supposed to run through the middle of the joist. The pipes are supposed to run through the middle of the joist. They don't. They will be in contact with the drywall. So anytime you cut the drywall, don't take a saw and go through like this. Don't use a sawzall. Use a multi-tool and just go through a little tiny bit, and then you take your dull knife and punch that paper through. Because sooner or later, and it's happened to me more than once, you find a 440 volt line that's in contact with that drywall. Yeah, that's how the guy in Petersburg was killed, Florida. Yep, more wires. Next slide. More wires. Pipes. Here's part of your detective story. Look, see all these dead bees? None on the honeycomb. Yeah, it was a dead out. Charge them the same price because I don't have to wear a suit, but now I have to decontaminate my equipment. Next slide. Don't be like this beekeeper. He busted up all the siding. It was put in with screws. He could have easily taken it out. Next slide. So they had me come back, cut the new pieces. I charged more for the repair than he did for the removal. Next slide. This is something you have to watch out for. People will call you and say, I've got bees going in the dirt or under the leaves of my bush. And you ask them, is there a little bit of gray showing? A little, yeah, their beeswax is gray. No, that is a ground form. Bees don't, I've never seen them make a colony on the ground. I've seen them make a colony in a compost heap, but it was because there was a space under the timbers. They don't, next slide. Be careful that you might run into Africanized bees. What you cannot see is all the stingers on my hat. Went up the ladder to take the bees out of the second story soffit, put my hat on the antenna, and my assistant, I don't know if it was you or Dakota, said, look at your hat. And my hat sitting on my antenna down the street was covered with bees, and I counted 98 stingers in my hat. What made this dangerous was there was an elementary school across the corner from us. So I knew if I didn't get them out by 2 o'clock, I was just going to have Dakota go down to the store and get a can of spray, and I was going to break the law. Because if you spray them, you become an exterminator, and that's illegal. But human life is more valuable. Next slide. Do we have sound on this? This is what you'll experience with Africanized bees. They will come at you and they won't quit. They will try to get through every scene that you've got. Why we wear sleeve protectors. That's why I don't see it somewhere, but I have ankle protectors, gaiters, like they use when they're mountain climbing. If it's really bad, I'll put a mosquito suit over top of my bee suit. So I've got, and they will still get through and sting. Okay, next slide. But at the end, you're going to be left with some little gentle straggler bees, and they're not going to be a problem. You never get all of them. The customer needs to have realistic expectations. When you're deciding which way do I go? Do I go from the top? Do I go from the side? Do I go from below? You need to think about your best ability to completely get all of the colony. Do it with the least, which way is going to be the least mess and destruction? Which is going to be the safest for the people surrounding you? Which is going to be the easiest to repair? And lastly, and least important, is the customer's preference. What the customers are always wrong. Yeah. Oh, it's just been there 2 weeks. It's small. So I don't want you to charge. I've seen, that swarm that was 220,000 bees had just come that morning. You don't know what size it's going to be. Now, here's a list of the tools that we use. I don't know, can we get the camera back at this point?
All right, I got pointed at you guys.
All right. Okay, angle, this is oscillating tool. People say, oh, blades are $6 a piece. No, you order them from Amazon. Pack of 24, it's about $26, $28. They also make special long blades. They also make carbide blades that are very good to go through the mortar of brick. The angle grinder, how do you go through the hardy plank? Use an angle grinder with a masonry cutoff wheel, right? It's only 1/32 of an inch thick. It makes very skinny cuts. Usually your seams, you line them up so that it's 90 degrees. It looks nice. You stagger them. I've seen people do the cut down 6 pieces of siding, a big ugly straight line. If you staggered it here, staggered it here, staggered it here, stagger it here, 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 when you put it back, it's going to look great. Little caulk on it, it'll look just as good. One thing you might notice about my angle grinder is it does not have a 90-degree guard on it, a 180-degree guard, excuse me. We're putting this up in corners, and especially in those soffits, because I'll use this around the edges of the soffit. You know, I'm not showing you any, special techniques, but if you want to know how to take a hardy plank soffit out without breaking it, so you can put it back, that's what our association is for. I make training videos for that. I made a video on how to do, take bricks out of a brick arch and then put them back. But I took my metal cutoff wheel and I sawed off part of this. And so it's about 100-degree angle, so I can get it up into the corners. Sometimes you need some special. That's a diamond finger. It's designed to go through mortar. That works. I have a Sawzall. Sawzall is a bad tool. I don't like to see people using the Sawzall because it's got a blade that goes like this and you're putting it somewhere where you can't see. That's how people cut through structure that they didn't know was a supporting structure. They cut through wires. The only time I would ever use a Sawzall is if you know for sure, either by sight or by feel, that there's nothing on the other side of that wood or concrete, whatever. They make concrete and masonry blades for oscillating saws or sawzalls as well. So that's one way you get those bricks out like a Lego. All right, use drill a hole in it with your impact drill, and then you can get the saw in there and just cut it out around like that. Special tools like chisels, things like that. Nail pullers. You want to use the smallest tools that you can for the job. You want to do as least damage as possible. So use little tiny nail pullers. I've got big ones. I've got a great big nail puller that's 3 feet long. I don't hardly ever use them. What else do we have? The most important thing, I think, is probably your shop vac and your D-vac. Now, there are 100 different types of bee vacuums. I chose this one. I made this one because I wanted something that had a really large capacity and yet was really light. So I can take it up to a ladder because I specialize in 2-story, 3-story removals. That's what I do. Now there's things like Tony Andrew. He has the everything bee-vac. It's self-contained, has a battery, has a rheostat, so you can adjust the suction on it. How much is it? $450. I made this for 20. Okay, but I'm a handy guy. There's other types out there, Colorado bee-vac, Bushkill bee-vac. I started with an Owens bee-vac, but let me show you the things that you need. You need ventilation. It could be screen, propolis trap, propolis collector in this case, whatever you want. I wanted to add windows to it so I could see. You need a vacuum source. I like having a shop vac. I can use that shop vac to suck up dirt, debris, dead bees, bleach and detergent water, honey spills. If I drop a piece of honeycomb down behind a wall, I don't want to leave it. I've got pipes. I can put them together. I've got a 12-foot PVC pipe. I can get that out and hook it directly to the shop vac. there, and hook that pipe and suck out anything I want. All right, so the shop vac goes on the bee vacuum. It's got a short hose that suck the bees. Now, some people say corrugated hose will kill the bees because they tumble through. Well, maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. But then if you're using a stiff hose, it's so stiff, if it's nice and flexible, it's going to kink and collapse on you, and you won't be able to get bees through. If it's stiff enough that it doesn't kink and collapse, then it's too hard to move and get it into those tight little places behind the wood up where you can't see that you want it to get. So I would prefer to use this. This is just personal preference. But the thing is, with an adjustable gate, you can control the suction much or as little as you want. Okay. Now, you said, now, once you get them in there, the bees, what's going to keep them from crushing each other? You've got some wire for them to hang on. And that way they don't crush each other. How do you make it airtight, Mark? Well, I used to have this designed as a bucket within a bucket. And it was pretty heavy. And then one day I forgot the bucket. And I said, oh, you know, I could just take duct tape, a whole lot of duct tape. Or take a garbage bag. And a big rubber band around it, turn on the vacuum, now it's airtight. Very lightweight. It's just a personal preference, it's what I like. A lot of people swear by the Colorado vacuum, okay? Let's see, Gosling drill with assorted nut drivers, tips, a hammer, hive tools, plural, guaranteed. You'll be working with one of these, the day you've only got one is the day you will drop it behind the brick. And now you're posed. Take 2 or 3. I buy them at the beginning of the year, I buy a dozen. Daniel dropped them, I've dropped them. Knives, flexible putty tools. Sometimes you want to be able to get those places you can't see or get that soffit that goes at an angle. So I've got a bent knife. Get creative, make your own tools. If you need something for the job, make it. Extension cord, smoker, what I've done with my smoker. This is my new smoker, you should see my own. I put a bail on it in a book, so now I can hang it on the ladder, because like I said, I deal a lot with the second story, where I can hang it on the roof, hang it on the gutter. You can even hang it on the joints between the brick. Fire can carry it in there. Toolbox. I didn't bring in my repellent. One of the ways you can control the movement of the bees, like I said, they try and run away from you, is by using a repellent. And you could use Bee Quick, Bee Gone. Some of them stink really bad. I don't remember which one it is, but it smelled like puke, vomit, rotten milk, everything. And I made a mistake of spraying it in a person's house, and they said they weren't able to use that for a month. So I threw it away. But you can use natural things like tea tree oil. Some people use orange oil, cherry oil, mix it up in the sprayer with a little soap and water, and you can spray it, and it doesn't last forever, but it's so much that it's irritating to them, and it'll keep them from crawling into cracks. I like to use turpentine. I like the way turpentine smells, just a personal preference. Queen clip, of course, if you see the queen, you won't always see the queen. Don't worry about it if you don't see her. What you will see is the exhaust of that vacuum. You turn around and suddenly there's a whole cloud of bees trying to go into the exhaust of the vacuum. That's when you know you've got the queen inside the bee box or bee vac or whatever you're using. That's when you know. Also, at the end of the job, when you take the plastic bag off and you set it over to the side, you see a cluster of bees all on one spot. That's another really good indication that the queen is in. The plastic bags that we use, by the way, it's not just a normal garbage bag. These are trash compactor bags. They're quite a bit heavier. They'll hold about 20 pounds of garbage. And let's see, duct tape, flashlight, food covers, minimal smoke. As you open up and expose the honeycomb, suck the bees off of the honeycomb. Now, there's two philosophies of bee removal. One is to save as much of the honeycomb as possible. People will take it, they'll take it. Oh, well, this fell apart, but there was two rubber bands here. All right, they'll have rubber bands across the frame like that. Cut the brood, put it in here, and then use vertical bands to hold it in from the other side. Some people use string, some people use wire. I like rubber bands because they're self-limiting. They'll snap after a while. This one just snapped in the last hour. But you know, usually the bees will cut them. After 4 or 5 days, you'll walk out and you'll see a pile of rubber bands laying on the ground in front of the beehive. They've taken them out of the beehive. Other people don't save any of the honeycomb, not a bit. There's different ways of doing this. What I found is if I save too much, it's too much work for them to do a repair job. So I will save maybe 3 pieces of brood, 1 piece of pollen, and only if the capped honey is in the comb that is very stiff and rigid. Because that new honeycomb is soft, you try and put rubber bands around capped honey, it's just going to fall right through the frame. You know, it's going to make a terrible mess. The more comb you save, though, the more likely you are to end up with small hive beetle infestation. I never take more than 5 total. Some people, like I said, they, like one guy I know, he uses scents, tea tree oil, smoke, whatever, and tries to get behind the colony and drive them all out. 100%, drive them all out. Captures the queen somewhere. He'll find the queen, get her in a clip, put her in a box, then he'll do the cutout. All right, if there's any bees left, he just shakes them off, rushes them into the box, takes all of that honeycomb, throws it into 5-gallon buckets. You know, he's going to throw it out on plastic in the bee yard later on. Then he packs everything up with, you know, with fiberglass to keep the bees from moving in, puts it all back together, and then comes back at night and collects that queen. Well, I hate driving and the rest of the colony. Well, I hate driving, so I want to do a job, finish up, and go home. And he does it in a 2-step process. Like I said, different people have to do it different ways. If you do save honeycomb, maintain the orientation, not only up and down, but also in order. Frame number 1, frame number 2, frame number 3. Also put it in the entrance the way that it was. If the entrance was on this side of the honeycomb, then put the frame on in the box, in either a nuke or a box, whatever you're taking with you, in the same way. Now, there's 2 ways of doing it. One is you can take the honeycomb home and then do the transfer at home, but you're going to have a lot of larvae that die that way. The best survival rate is if you've got your box right there at the cutout site and you're doing your cutout and you're putting it in right away. In fact, a lot of times the bees would start moving in there and you say, hey, you know, you're doing my job for me. Try and not crush the bees while you're doing that. And not only maintain the orientation, number 1, number 2, number 3, but if they were like number 1 was, don't flip it. Don't get it flipped around. So that what was facing frame number 2, which was facing frame number 3, now the number 3 facing side is facing number 1. Just try and maintain that orientation if you can. The reaction of the bees. What I tend to notice is and this is just me, Brian may have a different opinion. I tend to notice three behaviors. There's bees that are stickers. They just stay on the honeycomb. They're ignoring you. They're wonderful, easy to transfer. They'll just move in, accept the new box, no problem. Then there's runners. This is more common. As you're cutting the honeycomb, they're running. And as you cut the next piece, they're running. Usually the queen is always running away from you. And then at the end, you cut the last piece of honeycomb and you'll have a big ball of bees in the soffit or up in the gable, or maybe even run into the attic. That's another reason you might have to go into the attic, even though there was no honeycomb in the attic, is to get that ball of bees. Typically, I'll see that more in gable situation, and they'll run back in that gable 8, 9, 10 feet. That's why I have the 10-foot pipe that I've been sucking with the 10-foot pipe. If you're working inside the room, like through the floor or through the ceiling, try and block off the rest of the house and open the windows so the bees can fly out. We're going to be attracted to the lights. So any lights in the room, we're going to end up with a lot of dead bees in them. There's going to be bee poop on the wall, little yellow flecks. It's just something that the homeowner has to expect, and giving the homeowner realistic expectations is part of the job. You're not going to get all the bees. It is going to make a mess. There is going to be damage to the house. Now, if you are the kind of person that's real handy like I am, you could do the repair. But even if you're not going to do the repair, try and make it neat, because usually you always reuse the material, even the drywall. I'll reuse the drywall, put it back, blend the seams. You won't know. It's possible, but if you take a hammer, one guy took a hammer, he opened up the drywall with a hammer. That was his tool of choice. There was no need for it. Once you get all the bees, you want to scrape out all the wax and all the honey. You have a bleach pump sprayer with bleach and detergent water. I'll wash it and rinse it, wash it and rinse it, get it as all clean as I can. I want to prevent ants, I want to prevent mice, I want to prevent roaches, and I want to prevent black mold. Now you're going to get black mold regardless, but at least, you know, by getting all the honey, you reduce it. Then to prevent reinfestation, I have a lifetime warranty. I'm so confident in my bee proofing skills that I tell the customer, if they ever have another colony in the same spot, I'll come back in the chart. How do I do that? I pack it totally, completely with fiberglass for at least 2 feet, probably better 3 feet. Every cubic inch, every little crack, every little finger space, maybe that's between two 2x6s, pack it with fiberglass. So only build their colony in an empty spot. If you've got fiberglass with paper on it, take the paper off. That paper created a channel once with the wrinkles, stuffing it in there like that, and I had to come back and do a warranty removal on a house. And that was 3 years ago. It's been 3 years since I had a warranty removal. And that was the only one that year. Like I said, repair, that depends on you and your business model. At the end of the job, there should be that cluster of bees that, like you saw with my finger, sometimes it's a big cluster, sometimes it's a little cluster. Try and get them all if you can. The homeowner will be upset that these bees are remaining and they're going to die. But hey, that's part of the moving a colony. When I get them home, I'll put the frames in a box, and I put a queen excluder on the bottom of the box. If I didn't know I got it, when I put the frames in there and open up the bucket, I push the bees in, take that screen out, take it, they all go in there, put the lid on, they're locked in, leave them locked in for 2 or 3 days. The workers can come and go, but the queen, this is on the bottom, she can't leave. If I did find the queen and I've got her in a clip, then I don't need this. I'll just put her, you know, in the rubber band there on the column. All right, then come back 2 or 3 days later. There's going to be dead larvae. There's going to be honeycomb. There's going to be all kinds of debris on the bottom of your hive. and clean all that out, because that's going to attract small hive beetles. And then if you're using the screen bottom board, put that in there with the oil or adhesive to check for varroa mites. There's other ways of doing this, like I said, repellent. Some people do trap outs where they build the funnel one way, put the box there, bees can't get back in, but they've got a box, preferably with brood. Oh, I meant to tell you, if you're one of the people that don't say the cutout comb, when you put them in a box, take some comb from and some resources and some brood from one of your other hives and put it in there. It will help encourage them to stay.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
I think open,
Huh?
open brood, if you use open brood, your bees will stay a lot more frequently.
Right. Right. And Brian's mentioned something about if you use open brood, young brood, the bees are much more likely to stay. The problem is the open brood is much more temperature sensitive. So if you're saving them, and especially in Houston heat, you have to put them into a cooler or in the winter or something like that, or do an immediate transfer right there on site. The capped brood can survive better. Who was it? I think it was Yappies, the bee man at that opening at Winding Creek. I think he said that the capped brood can survive a day with outside the hive because they're capped, you know, as long as they don't get chilled. Last things, beekeepers will develop their own style. I watched 20 YouTube videos before I ever did my first one, and I realized even then, they only show you 80%. And they show you the interesting parts. They don't show you the boring parts. They don't show you the little details that you really ought to have known. They don't show you their failures. You learn a lot from your failures. So watch lots of videos, ask lots of questions. If you want to learn, we're happy to teach people. We have 2 levels of membership. One's the swarm captures and water meter. You don't have to do any real cutout. That's $25 a year. If you want to do the structural membership, that's $50 a year. And like I said, we're not trying to be good overlords. We're trying to help the next generation come along and develop best practices. Remember the old saying that the customer is always wrong? Well, in this industry, the customer is almost always, I'm sorry, the customer is always right. Well, in this industry, the customer is always wrong. You know, you have to use your own common sense and be smarter than the customer. Remember, bee relocations and cutouts are dangerous. People have died doing this. So please be careful. Don't exceed your limits. Know when to stop. Also, a lot of times the smartest decision you'll ever make, and it's a business decision, is knowing when to say, no, this is not for me, and to go home. The customer that keeps trying to say, well, can you do this? Can you do that? Well, as long as you're up there near my gutters, can you fix that gutter? Like, you know, just know when to say no. Say, I am not the beekeeper for you. Good luck. Okay, that's all. All right, thank you, Mark. Now, does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
I'm curious, well, actually, there's 2 questions. One, the $25 level that you were mentioning, how does, is that sort of text the period?
No. This has nothing to do with anybody. It's just, this is, well, our organization, the Texas Association of Professional Bee Removers. I've got some brochures if you're interested in it. And we wanted, we're the only vetted list of bee removers. You have to have proven yourself to be a structural member. Anybody can be a swarm catcher. You know, you want to learn, you want access to our training videos. You want to be able to call us. We have a monthly meeting. At the beginning of every monthly meeting, we have a half-hour shop talk. Usually I'm the person that does that, but not always. And so we'll cover something like the last one I did was going through a flat metal roof on a gable window. How do you go, if there's no other way to do it, how do you go through the metal roof? Well, the roof went on There's a way to take it off, and I showed them how to do it, okay? And that was the half-hour presentation. I've done like ladder safety and things like that. So, you know, we're not any way affiliated with the state, but we're trying to be an organized voice so they don't outlaw us. Because they almost passed a law a couple of years ago that would have required 160 hours of classroom training in order to do cutouts. Oh, and the person that wrote the law was going to be the only person that was authorized to do that training. Oh, well, funny how that works. Yeah. Other questions?
There's stickers, there's runners that you fit with.
Oh, you are correct, sir. The last one, and this is the most problematic, are these that fly. As you are taking the honeycomb out, they are flying away. And what you'll end up with is a big swarm 4 feet up in a tree or at the peak of the house, which is going to be about 30 feet. So that's a problem. Fortunately, I don't see that often. But that's one of those things where you might have to come back the next day and they will all be clustered on where the old entrance used to be. Because when I do the repair, I put everything back and I take silicone. I don't use latex caulk anymore. I don't use anything else. I just use silicone. Can they eat through it? Yes. They have to be really, really determined. So if you try to lock them in there with silicone, they would eat through it, but it's enough to keep them out. And remember, what you want to do is to keep out that scout weed, because those scout weeds next year, the year after that, they want to get into that old cabin. If they can't get into this spot, they'll go to this spot. So I do on the back of my invoice, I recommend to the customer, he goes, she goes all around the house and every gap. And I go around to the point. I tell you, do it there, do it there. Walk them around. And I say, it's easy enough to do. Any painter can do it. Any handyman can do it. Seal those gaps. Anything bigger than a 1/4 inch. I know B space is 3/8 of an inch, but I tell them 1/4 inch just to be safe. Any other questions? Yeah. Pardon?
I was curious about the arm cover thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I like to use these little gloves. I like the dexterity. I can feel what I'm doing. And a lot of times my best honeycomb removal tool is my fingers. You know, I'm in there and I'm straightening it with my fingers. You know, I'm doing a Bruce Lee karate chop or something like that. And I can do that with these little thin gloves. Can I sting through them? Yes. Oh, well, if that's a problem, wear 2 gloves or wear these little cotton gloves under them. But the problem is your wrists are exposed and even the ultra breeze suit just has 1 layer of fabric here. So you can buy these sleeve protectors online. I get them from Daiso, which is like a little Japanese discount store. And it just provides a little bit of extra protection, or you can just use masking tape.
Is that latex? What is that?
No, it's just nylon. It's just like a thin nylon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it just provides space. Yeah, it just gives a little space, a little bit of extra. Right. I got it at Daiso, which is a discount Japanese store, but you can get them online too. My wife got me some that are thicker and they're rubberized. It's nylon, it's rubberized coating, kind of like a camping parka. Yes, sir.
Next question. Afghanizing these, what's the frequency that you're seeing? Is it increasing? Is it about setting? What's your frequency?
I think it's decreasing. I did a removal of P. Malajuan back at 12. Huh? Yeah. Actually, he's called me twice. Once when he had a facility in Simon, and another time when he moved to his new house in Sugar Land. And they were on me so thick that I couldn't see. I had to wipe. It was like a windshield wiper, like that. And I don't know how they can get under elastic. They can get through zippers. Most I've ever been stung was 142 times. You're going to get stung. I would say what's the average?
When they're Africanized,
Yeah.
probably 20.
Yeah, on a normal removal though, the average fees.
Maybe 2, 3, 4 times,
Uh-huh.
depending on if you squish them. It's always.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Do you think that the, how the building goes to beekeeper, increase or decrease chances of actually having a problem? I had some neighbors who are convinced that if I have bees, they're gonna have bees in their house.
If you don't manage them, that is correct. Yeah, you don't let them get congested, give them enough space to expand, don't let them swarm. Because I've done many bee removals from places that are next to a family that had 20 or 30 hives and they weren't maintaining correctly. I've done 3 removals for a house, and I think we're gonna see more of this, guys. These people getting ag exemptions by putting bees on their property. All right, now, I have to go to Brookwood, Brookshire, to look at some ag property. I have to go to Sealy. That's out of my way. I'm going to avoid looking at that as much as possible. I'm going to put it off, which means that those bees aren't going to be managed very well. You know, I'm going to do the least amount of effort for the maximum amount of money, like anyone else would. And those bees swarmed and they went into the guy's house. So he said, I'm losing all the money that I'm saving on my ag exemption with all these bee removals, because every year he's paying $700, $800 for a bee removal. Yeah. But I think we're going to have more of that in the future. It'll be.
All right,
Yes,
one more question.
Yeah.
Do you have to be bonded to license for what you do?
That's part of why the state wanted to regulate it. There are no restrictions and no rules. You don't have to have a license. You don't have to have insurance. You don't have to be bonded. Anybody here could put a ad online tomorrow and say, I am a professional bee remover. People don't research it. I've got a 4.9 on Facebook, and a 5.0 on Google, a 5.0 on Yelp. I think I had a 4-star rating 10 years ago, was the last time I got a 4-star rating. But people don't research it. They just, the first person they find, they hire them, they come out, they do a crappy job, then they end up calling a professional and then end up paying again and more. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to start the organization, was to have professionalism, to say there is, I mean, there's nothing going to stop an unethical plumber, an unethical roofer. I can't tell you how many shoddy roofing jobs where the guy should have been sued, but people don't see it, they don't know it. And there's laws, but nobody's enforcing it. Yeah.
All right, okay, thank you, Mark.
Yeah, sorry, didn't.
Fantastic. Okay, need to wrap this up here, guys. We have 2 more things to do. We have our raffle, and we're doing random number generator for us. We have 4 of these nice cups. No, 3 of these nice cups. And we have a swarm box that Dan built that I think has been successfully caught swarms before, right, Dan? Is that a successful swarm box back there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's successful. So that's a winning swarm box. It's a winning swarm box. Okay, so we do random number generator, and then we have 2, I've got 2 announcements. One is March 2nd is Central Texas Beekeeper School. That is in Brenham, Texas. It's 8 hours of classroom instruction. It's like almost a whole year of coming to the club meetings to get instruction. So you can get that in one day. And then February 27th through March 17th is the rodeo. I'm not exactly sure when we start, but Gary's there with the chart. You can go sign up for a day. I can tell you it's a lot of fun when the kids are there. It's also a lot of fun in the evenings when let's say, slightly inebriated, occasionally people are there looking at the bees too. It's just a lot of fun. So that's it. If you want to call out the numbers, let us know who it is.
Here's our numbers.
All right.
Right.
I need glasses.
Here.
All right. Okay, shoot.
23.
Do it. Oh, okay, and we also have seeds back there at the table that Joe Tedori brought. They're for pollinator plants for bees, so be sure to grab a pack of those. Okay,
23.
23 is Cat Radigan. All right. One of these cups or the swarm box. Thirty-one. Nicole. She's not here. She left. All right.
Nicole.
Must be here to win. Must be present. 17. Clara Gafford. 30 is Christie Coles. No, she don't want to win.
Okay.
That's just 33. Scott Newell. Nobody, I don't think you guys got the sworn box yet, so keep in mind that's still available. 20. Simone Roanhild, I think that's what that says.
Go girl. Swarm box.
All right. Okay, our next meeting is March, the whatever, third Tuesday of March, and we'll be back at Mainland. So we'll do, and then we're gonna do mentors. James is our mentor coordinator. He's gonna go right over there underneath the basketball hoop and just kind of meet him over there. People who either want to be a mentor or want to start keeping bees and are looking for a mentor. James can get you guys all connected. He's got it going.
And if you haven't paid your dues, please go online, beekeepers.org and pay your dues, please.
All right.
Can I make a quick flow out?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, my name is Brian. I've been removing bees for about 8 years, and that's how I got started. I'm actually, having a class on intro bee removals. I've got a couple, hives that are in some typical garden boxes, out on Skinner Road. And I'm gonna have a live hands-on class for that, removals, and then, kind of go over some of the more simple ones that are more available. You'll find those on our swarm list that come through, Beekeepers Association. So, anyway, I'll put a link on the Facebook page so you guys can, take a look at that, all right?
All right, thank you. That concludes our meeting.